The morning sun stretched long shadows across my front lawn as Meredith Sinclair, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA, stood in handcuffs, her usually immaculate blonde hair now a frizzy, chaotic mess from fighting the federal marshals. Her voice, normally commanding and sharp at neighborhood meetings, had cracked into something shrill and frantic as she shouted about her rights, insisting she needed to speak to the chief of police immediately. The officers didn't flinch. They continued guiding her toward the waiting patrol car with professional calm, while crime scene technicians moved through my home behind them, documenting every trace of evidence. My neighbor, Robert Chen, stepped outside, mid-sip from his coffee mug, staring across the street like he couldn't trust his own eyes. He approached an officer carefully and asked what in the world was going on. The marshal answered with a simple, heavy truth that made Robert's jaw drop. "She broke into a federal judge's home. That's a felony. Let me back up and explain how this happened. My name is Marcus Blackwood, and I've served as a federal judge in the Eastern District for the last 12 years. After presiding over multiple high-profile organized crime cases that earned me more than a few death threats against myself and my family, I relocated to Willowbrook Estates, a gated community on the outskirts of Riverside. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd moved here seeking peace, anonymity, and quiet relaxation, yet I soon found myself caught in the most absurd, yet legally significant, confrontation of my entire career. When I moved in 6 months ago, I made every effort to stay under the radar. My townhouse was modest compared to the neighborhood's larger homes, and I introduced myself simply as Marcus, a government employee. I never attended HOA meetings, didn't join any committees, and politely declined invitations to wine tastings, book clubs, and social gatherings. All I wanted was to come home after long days in court, tend to my small garden, and appreciate the silence I felt I'd earned. That silence swashiered 3 months ago when I received my first HOA compliance notice. The letter, printed on unnecessarily fancy letterhead, claimed that my window blinds were not regulation white, but eggshell, supposedly violating Section 12(3) of the HOA bylaws. I actually found the accusation amusing, considering those blinds came with the house and had previously been approved by the HOA. The letters escalated quickly when I didn't respond. Week 2 brought a complaint about my mailbox, which apparently needed repainting, despite looking exactly like every other mailbox on the street. Week 3 brought a grievance about the small American flag I'd hung beside my door. Meredith claimed it exceeded the allowed dimensions by 2 inches. By week 4, she demanded I remove my backyard bird bath, calling it a wildlife attraction hazard. Each notice grew more hostile, shifting from gentle reminders to stern warnings, and finally outright threats of fines. What Meredith didn't realize was that I'd spent years dealing with actual criminals issuing actual threats. Her passive-aggressive tirades about window blinds and bird baths barely registered on my radar. I ignored the notices, prioritizing a complex RICO case that demanded my full attention. My silence seemed to enrage her. Soon, she began leaving voicemails at all hours, her tone syrupy sweet, but unmistakably cutting, reminding me of my obligations as a homeowner in Willowbrook Estates. One evening, she even arrived at my door, clipboard in hand, insisting that we discuss my violations in person. I calmly explained that I wasn't interested in discussing anything without proper legal documentation and closed the door. That's when things took a darker turn. Meredith began whispering to neighbors that I was hiding something. At the monthly HOA meeting, she suggested that residents who refused inspections could be running illegal businesses or worse from their homes. She even proposed mandatory quarterly inspections for every house. The board barely voted the motion down, thanks to a few neighbors who still valued their privacy. But Meredith wasn't deterred. She decided to act on her own. One Thursday afternoon, while I was 50 miles away, presiding over a complicated securities fraud case, she made her move. Using an old contractor access code she'd somehow obtained, she bypassed my security gate and slipped into my home through the back door. What she didn't know was that my house wasn't protected by a SEC alarm system. Due to the credible threats I'd received over the years, the U.S. Marshals Service had installed a robust security system throughout my home, complete with cameras in every room except the bathrooms. These cameras streamed directly to a monitoring station staffed around the clock by federal agents. The moment Meredith stepped inside, she triggered security alerts that set a response into motion. Inside my home, she worked with the confidence of someone who'd done illegal inspections before. She photographed everything from my bookshelves to the inside of my refrigerator. She opened closets, rummaged through my bathroom cabinet, examined medications, and even had the absurd boldness to sit at my desk and riffle through papers I'd left there. Finding nothing scandalous, she started rearranging items to take photographs that fit her invented violations. The peak of her intrusion came when she entered my bedroom. On my nightstand, she placed a bright red violation notice listing 23 supposed infractions she discovered. These included non-regulation hangers in my closet and having too many law books, which she claimed created a fire hazard. She signed it dramatically and even snapped a selfie beside my bed, apparently proud of her illegal inspection. But while she continued her unauthorized tour, the monitoring station had already dispatched units to my home. Federal marshals arrived within minutes, forming a perimeter and preparing to apprehend what they initially assumed might be a serious security threat. They watched in real time as Meredith wandered through my house, every move captured by the security feeds. By the time I received the urgent call from Marshal Davidson, she had already been inside for nearly 30 minutes. I immediately excused myself from court, informing my clerk that there had been a security breach at my home. The 40-minute drive back felt agonizingly slow. As I gripped the steering wheel, the weight of what was unfolding hit me. Someone had violated my privacy, breached my safety, and potentially jeopardized the protection of future witnesses who might rely on my home as a secure location. When I finally arrived, my Normaliquid street was filled with federal vehicles. Marshals had already secured the area and were waiting for my formal statement before moving forward with the arrest. Inside, crime scene technicians were cataloging everything Meredith had touched, dusting surfaces for fingerprints, and photographing the bright red violation notice she'd left behind. Marshal Davidson showed me the live security footage on a laptop in the driveway, and watching Meredith move through my home with such arrogant ease made my blood boil. Her behavior reflected complete contempt for the law, for privacy, and for basic decency. She had twisted her position as HOA president into a weapon to satisfy her obsession with control. After giving my statement, I contacted District Attorney Patricia Williams, a trusted colleague from many previous cases. As I walked her through what had happened, especially the part about the federal monitoring footage, her disbelief grew audible. Patricia assured me the case would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, not because I was a judge, but because no community could allow this kind of abuse of authority to stand. The arrest that followed felt almost anticlimactic. Meredith stepped out of her house in her designer workout gear, clearly dressed for an upcoming pilot's class. Her expression shifted rapidly: annoyance, confusion, and then rising panic. As Marshal Davidson read her rights, she kept insisting that this was a misunderstanding, that she had full authority as HOA president to inspect properties. When they informed her she was being charged with breaking and entering, criminal trespass, an impersonation of a federal officer due to her claim of conducting an official inspection, her protests exploded. She demanded to call her husband, her attorney, the mayor, anyone who might pull her out of this. But the marshals continued their process calmly, unmoved by her desperation. The local news picked up the story within hours. Meredith's mugshot, her meticulously applied makeup now smeared from crying, appeared on 3 major stations. The headline read, "Federal Judge's Home Invaded by HOA President," and networks broadcast the security footage showing her rummaging through my belongings. The next morning, Meredith's preliminary hearing was held in federal court, ironically in the same building where I normally presided, though, of course, a different judge handled her case. Judge Thompson, known for his strict stance on abuses of power, set her bail at $50,000 and ordered her to have no contact with me or any Willowbrook Estates residents while the case moved forward. That evening, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. With Meredith unable to attend due to her legal situation, Vice President James Morrison took charge. The vote to remove her as president was unanimous. Several board members expressed both shock at her behavior and personal apologies for the harassment I'd endured. They passed new policies requiring written homeowner consent for any inspections and revoked all existing contractor access codes to prevent similar breaches. The criminal case advanced quickly. With undeniable video evidence and multiple federal agents ready to testify, Meredith's attorney urged her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to criminal trespass and abuse of authority, earning 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and a $10,000 fine. The federal charges for entering a protected residence added another year of probation and an additional $15,000 in fines, but her legal troubles were only the beginning. I filed a civil suit for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of federal protection statutes. My attorney estimated the damages could exceed $100,000, not including legal fees. Meredith's homeowner's insurance refused coverage for intentional criminal acts, leaving her fully responsible. Her professional downfall was equally catastrophic. Meredith worked as a real estate agent for Platinum Properties, one of the area's top firms. After news of her arrest and conviction spread, the brokerage immediately terminated her employment, citing severe reputational damage and breach of ethics. Her real estate license was suspended pending review, effectively ending her career. Socially, Willowbrook Estates turned its back on her. Former friends stopped answering her calls and quietly avoided her in public. The power network she had built through intimidation disintegrated overnight. Several residents came forward with their own stories of her overreach, none as extreme as mine, but enough to paint a clear picture. At her sentencing hearing, Meredith stood before Judge Thompson, a far cry from the domineering woman who once terrorized homeowners over mailbox paint and garden decorations. She wore a plain black suit, her hair pulled back, her former confidence drained away. When invited to speak, she attempted an apology, but it fell flat, focused more on how the situation had impacted her life than on the severity of her crimes. Judge Thompson responded firmly. He reminded her that a person's home is sacred, that communities place deep trust in their elected representatives, and that the severity of violating the residence of a federal official was no trivial matter. He emphasized that her actions were not a harmless mistake, but a calculated abuse of power with serious security implications. The total consequences were devastating. Between the criminal fines, restitution, and the looming civil judgment, Meredith faced over $150,000 in financial liabilities. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. She was banned from serving on any HOA board or in any fiduciary role for life, and the federal conviction would follow her forever, making any future employment requiring trust or responsibility nearly impossible. As the bailiff prepared to escort her out, Meredith's face collapsed. The full weight of her downfall, everything she had built on intimidation and control, had finally hit. She scanned the courtroom for allies, but found none, only the unyielding faces of justice. Her mouth opened soundlessly, unable to form words equal to the ruin she now faced. The woman who had broken into my home searching for imaginary violations had instead uncovered the harsh reality of her own criminality and the price of her obsession.